The director of ARMS says that one day he hopes to bring the franchise back for another go, and that left us wondering, would we welcome it back with open arms? What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from Switchforce, and Gabe is here, and director of ARMS, Kosuke Yabuki, spoke with Famitsu today, and they asked him about a potential ARMS 2. Now, he wouldn't say anything very definitive, but he did say that one day he hopes to continue the ARMS story. He also made mention that they'll continue to update ARMS 1 with, of course, under-the-hood updates, balances, and things of that sort. They're done with characters. And that he's preparing ARMS for its launch in South Korea next month. And that has me all sorts of quizzical, Gabe. Would we, and would you guys out there, want ARMS to come back for another go?
I would absolutely want it to come back. I feel like Splatoon 2 is such an improvement on the original, and they've been able to make it a full-fledged franchise now. We know that, Inklings are coming to Super Smash World, things of that nature. I'm not saying that I don't think anyone from ARMS is coming to Smash. I do think that happens as well. But I think we absolutely should get an ARMS 2 at some point. Maybe not a priority. Do some other stuff first, but I would love to have another entry in the franchise. I liked it.
Well, I think it's an interesting discussion, primarily because Nintendo has been so creative with their new IP as of late. I mean, I think Splatoon is... I think the original Splatoon is a better foundation than ARMS. I don't think ARMS is bad in any way. I loved ARMS. We had a blast with it. But I think that Splatoon 1 is a stronger game than ARMS 1. And therefore, Splatoon 2 does improve, and it's this awesome game. We've actually been diving back into Splatoon 2 in preparation for the Octo expansion and just really realizing how awesome that game is and how the many components, single player, multiplayer, are all so well done. But I wonder, what do you do with an ARMS 2? And even if they did have an idea, would it be more interesting if Nintendo kind of sprouted flowers in different gardens and created an entirely new IP? Would that be more exciting to see something brand spanking new on Switch, rather than a couple of years down the line get an ARMS sequel with an expanded roster, a story mode, since that's what Yabuki seems most interested in, is the lore? Would we be better served with something totally different?
Well, who's to say we can't have both? Why can't we have a completely new IP and also a sequel to ARMS in the future? Look, I think that the way you improve ARMS is by doing something that's a little contradicting. First, you tighten up and you also expand. I know, contradicting. But, you tighten up what's there. The gameplay is already great, but take away some of the modes that maybe weren't as popular and people just aren't that interested in. Get rid of those and replace those and expand the story the way that, we think he means is with... a story mode, like something that delves deeper into the lore, because that does seem to be his focus. So, yeah, I think an ARMS 2 that improves on story, gives us a story mode, maybe some cutscenes, and tightens up the multiplayer and incentivizes it a little bit more, to customize the way characters look. Think maybe Injustice 2, obviously that's super deep and those characters lend themselves to it a little bit more. But an ARMS game where, my Twin Tail doesn't necessarily look like your Twin Tail would be very cool.
More customization could definitely be something that would expand and improve. I wonder if the reason for ARMS... Is it fair to say that ARMS was not as well received as Splatoon 1? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is.
So I wonder if that reason is because people wanted more of it, or if it's that the foundational gameplay and the foundational concept isn't as appealing. Because if they want more, then yeah, you definitely can expand and do plenty. But I wonder if that style of fighting just isn't for everyone. And I try to think of how they could better the systems, because at the end of the day, like something like Injustice that has a direct sequel, or even Mortal Kombat that has infinite direct sequels, their fighting systems are sound. And I wonder if this fighting system is fun enough or polished enough to have a direct sequel that doesn't do something dramatically different.
I mean, you can introduce different things as well, right? I mean, who's to say, not that there's not like any types of combos, but, maybe a little bit more attack chaining. You can change up the gameplay enough, but even if they were to decide to keep it as is, I do think that what's here is simple, but deep enough to warrant living on in another game. Like that. I don't think the reason people don't like ARMS as much is because of the gameplay. That's not it. I think it was just content. Like
lack of content?
Yeah. That's the only complaint we hear about ARMS, that, hey, it shouldn't be a $60 game. There's not enough here. I feel like people felt burned by that. You know, there wasn't like a fun, whimsical story to go along with really anything. Like, yeah,
so
we
you
got
think
like
some
cutscenes
and maybe some sort of hub world makes ARMS 2 a much more enticing package for majority of players?
Yeah, I do, actually.
I'm very curious to see
not
what
only
the response is.
not only some cutscenes, right? But like make them a little bit sizable.
So you want voiced characters? You want this to be okay? Now it's not something Nintendo typically does, but it would be very cool to see. I feel like Splatoon has quickly asserted itself as a top-tier Nintendo franchise. I mean, it's not at the caliber and the longevity, obviously, of something like Mario or Zelda, but in terms of like just pure fun factor and hype, I feel like and I don't mean hype like, oh, when the game, people are going to be just as excited for Splatoon 3 as they are for the next Mario. I just mean the current like discourse around Splatoon is very positive, right? It's very upbeat. People really love that game. We're pumped for the Octo expansion. Nintendo treats it with the utmost care and, you know, puts it on a pedestal like its other main franchises. I don't feel like ARMS earned that level of status yet, but I could see how a sequel could cement it. I guess it's just like, does Nintendo want to double down on that roster, on those characters, and on that as one of their core Switch franchises, or do they want to try their hand at something different? I'm going to, I guess, be a little bit of a rebel here and say that I would rather see them do something totally different, because I don't know how much you can do with ARMS without dramatically changing it to make it that much different. Like, how much different does an ARMS 2 feel than an ARMS 1? And I know you could say the same thing about plenty of other fighting franchises, but for me personally, I would just rather have ARMS be ARMS and then get something completely different.
Sure, but, you know, if you think back, and, you know, these are probably bad examples. Street Fighter, right, as it continues to have new iterations, right, the jump from, like, Street Fighter, we'll say 2, to, like, Alpha, it's drastic, and yeah, a lot of time passed in between there, right? But even Street Fighter 4 and 5, like, different games, like, maybe not visually, they're not as different, but they work different, like, mechanically, right? The tier of which characters are going to be better, that can change. The abilities can change a little bit. You can, of course, introduce new characters and maybe not even use this full roster in the next game. You know, pick the ones that are more popular and then just have new additions, sort of like what Street Fighter does.
Do you think the moveset would need to be expanded? Would you want to see a complication of the controls or of the moveset so that the characters played even more diversely?
Yes, I would like to see that, but I think that's just not what Nintendo wants in a fighting game that isn't Smash. I feel like Smashers are like, hey, esports fighting, that's Smash. This is way more family friendly.
And that's why I say maybe it's cool to just exist as a single title, because if it's not going to deepen, I guess the question becomes, does a different roster improve ARMS in any way, or at that point are you just looking for variety in the same way that you want, you know, DLC or expanded content for an already really cool game?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. So
yeah, I'm very curious to see what Nintendo does. We won't know obviously for a number of years, but I love the fact, regardless of what happens with Ibuki and his ARMS lore, I just love that Nintendo has been bold on this front as of late. And I think no matter what your opinion is, if there should be an ARMS 2, if there shouldn't be, you loved ARMS, you hated ARMS, it's safe to say that Nintendo trying new IP and introducing new characters has been a successful venture as of late. And I love that they have done that, because remember, for a while, it seemed like they would never innovate on that front, right? On new characters, on new concepts. It was just a whole lot of franchises that, you know, saw their turn come up on the calendar and then were released. Now we're starting to see Nintendo diversify. They have achieved incredible success with the Switch as a platform, and to see them do that with new IP and new game ideas is great. I personally, I just want more of them. Like, I hope we get a new IP at E3. And I'm curious to know what your take is in the comments down below. Also, I want Yabuki's hoodie. In the meantime, though, everybody, let us know your take on an ARMS 2, how you feel about it, what you think could be different, better, more, or if ARMS should just exist as a one-off and we get something totally different next time around. Let us know. Until then, everybody, for myself and Gabe, thanks so much. Switch Force out.